time for questions. All our farmers are going to come up on stage, Joel as well, and we are going to have official... so we've got a question there. That looks like Nick from Milkwood, who's got... Okay, so the question is, what's next with the Legal Defence Fund?
As the acting chair, until we nominate someone else who maybe wants to do it, I'll answer that. The next stage, so in this year in total we've raised, it's actually approaching $70,000 for the Legal Defence Fund. Some of those funds have already been distributed to farmers in need, and that, I have to say, was one of the most, I think one of the most useful things AFSA has ever done, is actually just send money to people who are struggling with all of these problems. So that's already happening. The next move will be for the steering committee to decide on the right hires, whether we take on a permanent part-time research assistant, admin officer to help field the, I mean, I get anywhere from 1 to 10 sort of emails and phone calls every week or two with people struggling across the country with these things. So we need somebody who's paid to manage those requests. And then we've got a couple of projects that we're going to discuss whether we go ahead with. One is about mapping exactly what those regulatory barriers are, whether it's food safety or planning barriers. Map them across all the states, see if we can find any best practice examples and say, look, it's going really well in WA, but I don't know of any, so we'll see how it goes. Map the problems and then start to build a case for reform and take it to the government. They really actually appreciate when you can show them what legislation could look like, because for them it's very difficult. They can't really envision our systems. And so if we can say, well, this is what scale appropriate regulation might look like in a system like ours, maybe they can then work towards it. As actually Joe talked about, there's already some work being done in Victoria on the planning scheme. Hopefully AFSA is about to have a seat on that reference group for implementation. We were invited to apply and we have. Yeah, so there's the mapping, and then the other one is some work on building the scientific case, as the intensive industry has for 20 years against smallholders. We want to build the scientific case for smallholders and against what intensive industrialized agriculture is doing to the world.
Do you want to say it to the mic? Yeah.
In Victoria, the laws have changed such that we as dairy farmers all got a letter from Food Safety Victoria saying that we cannot even let our staff take milk from our vats. So we know farmers who now buy milk to drink at home because their staff come up for breakfast once a week for a staff meeting or those sorts of things. Has there been any thought around pro bono offerings from people in the legal fraternity to give us ideas of how we can, and I know this sounds a bit naughty, but how we can get around these things? Because when farmers themselves stop drinking their own product because they're frightened that they could be in legal trouble if one of their staff chooses to, well, someone gets upset because they got told off for something, you know, we're in a pretty bad place.
Yeah, thank you. We have a number of lawyers on the steering committee for the LDF who have already been providing some pro bono advice in minor cases. That is actually the next stage of their efforts, is to find out where we need to target those efforts most clearly. One of the lawyers who's recently joined and wants to give us assistance actually just left. She was here all day. Her firm sent her to this, and she's going back to write a report for them about the ways that their firm could be providing pro bono support to the fund. There are two other lawyers on the... And there are two other lawyers on the steering committee as well who are trying to work out within either their independent practice or within their firms how they can be providing this sort of advice to us as well. So yes, we're working with a number of lawyers to see how we can start working on things like that. Thanks so much.
We're the converters. What can we do to get everyone else on board with this?
We are the converted. What can we do to get everyone else on board with this? Thank you. Good question.
I'll just say, first of all, not all your friends are. Go home and tell them. Right? And keep showing them how delicious your life is. That helps.
It works.
the enemy of this movement is apathy. You know, as long as the Kardashians are still on TV and Hot Pockets are in the refrigerator, all is well in the world, right? And so, you know, as you have sat here and listened to these stories, you know, my reaction is, why isn't this front page news? You know, why did nobody ever hear about this? And of course, in America now, everything's about the fake news media, but I'll just say that this is a hard message. This is not a nice message for the media to deal with, because their advertisers are supermarkets. The media is supported by the pharmaceutical industry, the chemical industry. In other words, we're talking about lobbyists. The money is there, and so this is a hard message for the media to, you know, to dare to question by what authority do you deny me choice? And that's a powerful question. Ultimately, you cannot have. Let me say it this way: the difference between a society of tyranny and a society of freedom is how it responds to its weirdos. I mean, that's funny, but it's also extremely true.
Transgender people?
Excuse me? What?
Does that include transgender people who you referred to?
Absolutely,
earlier?
absolutely. Absolutely, yes. And it's, from different cultures, different religions, different whatever. You know, how we treat the oddball absolutely defines our culture of liberty. And so that's why, you know, in our Constitution, a lot of these things are protected in order to protect the guy who writes weird stuff, the guy who speaks weird stuff, the group who assembles and says weird stuff. You know, it's how we deal with those weirdos that defines it. And so we are a free society only to the extent that we allow the expression of personal choice and liberty. Only so far. And I think as a result, we can see as the stories today, we have moved very far down the path of a tyrannous, paternalistic body that has changed it. In the U.S., I'll just give you an example of laws. We have for poultry, we have a producer-grower. It's called Public Law 90-492. It's a federal law, and it allows a producer-grower to grow and on-farm harvest without inspection up to 20,000 chickens a year and direct sell them, including to hotels, restaurants, and institutions. That's why we've been successful. In other words, we're not here's the thing, you know, a lot of the opposition often looks at us and says, you're just a bunch of anarchists. You know, you're just a bunch of anarchists. No. Why can't we have people who want government regulations? We're not saying if you want to drink pasteurized milk, you shouldn't. So here's my problem.